Catriona MacLeod had flown 247 routes in her 8 years as a pilot, but none had prepared her for the moment she'd glance into business class and see her brother-in-law's hand wrapped around another woman's waist at 35,000 feet. The pre-dawn darkness over Glasgow had a particular quality that Catriona MacLeod had grown to love, a deep purple that held the promise of somewhere else. She stood in her kitchen in Finnieston, still in her pajamas, watching the city lights flicker across the Clyde while her coffee brewed. In 3 hours, she'd be in the cockpit of an Airbus A320, bound for Paris. In 4, she'd be above the clouds where problems seemed small and the world made sense in a way it never did on the ground. Her phone buzzed against the granite counter. Isla. Her younger sister's name glowed in the darkness. "You're up early," Catriona said, tucking the phone between her shoulder and ear as she poured her coffee. "Couldn't sleep." Isla's voice sounded thin, stretched. "Callum left for a business trip yesterday. The house feels enormous when he's gone." Catriona heard what her sister didn't say. The 16-room estate in Milngavie felt enormous because it was a monument to Callum Buchanan's success, all glass and stone and carefully curated emptiness. Her sister lived there like a butterfly in a display case, beautiful, preserved, and utterly still. "When's he back?" Catriona asked, though she was already mentally calculating time zones and flight paths, the way she always did. "Friday. He's in Paris. Something about the new tech acquisition." Isla laughed, but it sounded rehearsed. "You know Callum. Always working. Always building the empire. Always absent," Catriona thought but didn't say. She'd learned years ago that criticizing Callum Buchanan was like criticizing the weather to someone who'd convinced themselves they loved the rain. Isla had married him 5 years ago in a ceremony that cost more than most people's houses, a fairy tale wedding for a fairy tale life. Except fairy tales, Catriona had noticed, rarely mentioned how lonely castles could be. "I'm actually flying to Paris today," Catriona said, watching steam rise from her mug. "Charles de Gaulle. We land at 10:30. "Really?" For the first time, Isla's voice lifted. "Maybe you'll see him. Wouldn't that be funny?" Hilarious, Catriona thought. The chances of seeing Callum Buchanan in a city of 2 million people were astronomical. Paris was enormous, and men like Callum moved through private channels, luxury cars, exclusive restaurants, 5-star hotels where people like Catriona only existed to serve. "Maybe," she said instead. "Look, I need to get ready. Try to sleep. Yeah? Read that book I sent you. The one about the woman who leaves her husband and opens a bookshop in Edinburgh. That's the one." Isla laughed again, softer this time. "You're not subtle, Cat. Never claimed to be. Love you, Wee Yin. Love you too. Safe flight." The call ended, and Catriona stood in her kitchen, watching Glasgow wake up beyond her window. She and Isla had grown up in Maryhill, in a tenement flat where you could hear the neighbors' arguments through the walls and count the coins in your pocket before deciding if you could afford the bus. Their mother had cleaned offices in the financial district. Their father had driven a taxi until his heart gave out when Catriona was 17. She'd escaped through the sky, studying and scraping and fighting her way into the cockpit. Isla had escaped through Callum Buchanan, who'd walked into the boutique where she worked in the merchant city and decided she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Different escapes. Different cages. Catriona arrived at Glasgow Airport as the sun broke over the horizon, painting the runways gold. She loved this part, the ritual of it. The uniform that transformed her into Captain MacLeod. The security checks. The crew briefing. The walk through the terminal where she became someone people trusted with their lives. "Morning, Captain." Her first officer, James Chen, was already in the cockpit, running through pre-flight checks. Young, brilliant, meticulous. "Weather's clear all the way to Paris. Should be a smooth one." Famous last words, Catriona said, sliding into her seat. But she smiled as she said it. The passengers boarded in waves, economy first, then premium economy, finally business class. Catriona didn't usually pay attention to the passenger manifest. They were cargo, in the most respectful sense, precious cargo she was responsible for delivering safely. But today, for some reason, she felt restless. "I'm going to do a walkthrough," she told James. "Make sure everyone's settled." He raised an eyebrow, unusual for a captain to do a cabin check, but nodded. Catriona made her way down the aisle, smiling at passengers, checking overhead bins, exchanging pleasantries with the cabin crew. Economy was full, families heading to Disneyland Paris, students with backpacks, a group of elderly women who'd clearly planned this trip for years. Premium economy was business people in rumpled suits, already working on laptops. And then business class. She almost didn't see him. Business class passengers had a way of making themselves invisible, hiding behind newspapers and eye masks and noise-cancelling headphones. But as she passed row 3, a man laughed, a distinctive sound, sharp and confident. Catriona knew that laugh. She'd heard it at Christmas dinners and birthday parties, at her sister's wedding where it had boomed across the reception hall of Buchanan Manor. She stopped walking. Callum Buchanan sat in 3A, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled, his watch caught the cabin light. And his hand, his left hand, the one with the platinum wedding band, was resting on the knee of the woman beside him in 3B. The woman wasn't Isla. She was younger, maybe 30, with dark hair swept into a chignon and a designer dress in burgundy silk. Beautiful in that polished, expensive way that money could buy. She was leaning into Callum, whispering something that made him smile, an intimate smile, the kind that spoke of shared secrets and private jokes. Catriona's heart became a stone in her chest. She watched, frozen in the aisle like a passenger who'd forgotten their seat number, as Callum's thumb traced a small circle on the woman's knee. Casual. Comfortable. The gesture of someone who'd done it 100 times before. Captain? Everything all right? Sarah, one of the senior flight attendants, had appeared at her elbow, concern creasing her face. Catriona realized she'd been staring. Callum hadn't noticed her. He was absorbed in his conversation, his attention focused entirely on the woman beside him. But if she stood here much longer, he would. Fine, she managed, her voice steady despite the earthquake in her chest. Just checking on the cabin. Looks good. She turned and walked back toward the cockpit, her legs mechanical, her mind screaming. What do you do when you discover a secret that will destroy the person you love most? Would you tell your sister immediately, or would you need time to be sure of what you saw? Back in the cockpit, James was finishing the final checks. All good. Perfect, Catriona lied, strapping herself in. She'd flown through storms, through mechanical failures, through turbulence that had made seasoned travelers weep. She'd landed with one engine, talked down a frightened crew, and made decisions at 500 miles per hour that meant the difference between life and death. But nothing had prepared her for this. As the plane pushed back from the gate and she began the familiar taxi to the runway, Catriona's hands moved through the practice motions while her mind raced. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe the woman was a colleague. Maybe the hand on the knee meant nothing, just a friendly gesture misread by an overprotective sister. But she'd seen Callum smile. She'd seen the intimacy in that small circle his thumb had traced. And she knew. The plane lifted off, Glasgow falling away beneath them, and Catriona MacLeod realized she was carrying more than 180 passengers to Paris. She was carrying a truth that would either save her sister or shatter her completely. The question was, what did loyalty demand? Silence or revelation? And as they climbed through 10,000 feet, banking east toward France, Catriona had 2.5 hours to decide. The flight to Paris should have taken 2 hours and 15 minutes. For Catriona, every minute stretched into an eternity. She flew on autopilot, literally and figuratively, while her mind circled the same impossible question. James handled the radio communications, made the standard announcements, chatted about his upcoming holiday to the Highlands. Catriona responded when necessary, smiled when expected, and felt like she was piloting her own body from somewhere far away. At 35,000 feet, the sky was impossibly blue. Below them, the English Channel glittered like hammered silver. Beautiful. Serene. A lie of peace while her world tilted sideways. She kept seeing it, Callum's thumb on that woman's knee. The ease of it. The ownership. You seem distracted today, James said as they began their descent into French airspace. Not like you. Catriona forced herself to focus. Just tired. Didn't sleep well. Want me to take the landing? She should have said yes. Her head wasn't in the cockpit. It was back in row 3, watching her brother-in-law betray her sister at 500 miles per hour. But she was Captain Catriona MacLeod, and she'd never handed off a landing in her life. I've got it, she said. The descent was textbook perfect. She could fly this route in her sleep. Paris appeared below them, The Seine a silver ribbon through the city's heart, the Eiffel Tower a needle pointing at the sky. They touched down smooth as silk, and Catriona taxied to the gate with hands that didn't shake, even though everything inside her was trembling. "Nice landing, Captain," James said, already unfastening his harness. "Thanks." She went through the shut-down procedures mechanically, her mind racing ahead. The passengers would deplane. Callum would walk past the cockpit with that woman. And Catriona would have to decide, right now, in the next 10 minutes, what kind of sister she was going to be. The kind who protected Isla from painful truths? Or the kind who armed her with them? She stood at the cockpit door as passengers filed past, offering the standard smile and farewell. "Thank you for flying with us. Enjoy Paris. Safe travels." The words came automatically, muscle memory from 1,000 flights. Economy passengers first, the families and students and elderly women, all grateful to be on solid ground. Then premium economy, laptops already packed, minds on meetings and schedules. And then business class. Catriona saw them before they saw her. Callum and the woman, walking together. Not holding hands, he was too smart for that in public, but close. The woman's carry-on matched her burgundy dress perfectly. Callum's suit jacket was draped over his arm, and he was laughing at something she'd said, his head tilted toward her in that attentive way that Isla used to inspire, back when they were newlyweds. Catriona's heart hammered against her ribs. She could let them pass. Could smile blandly and say nothing, store this information away until she figured out what to do with it. But then Callum looked up. His eyes met hers, and she watched the recognition hit him like a physical blow. His smile froze. His step faltered. For one beautiful, terrible moment, every emotion crossed his face. Surprise, guilt, calculation, fear. Catriona. His voice was too loud, too jovial. Overcompensating. What a small world. "I didn't know you were flying this route." The woman beside him looked between them, confusion flickering across her carefully made-up face. "Callum." Catriona kept her voice level, professional. "Isla mentioned you had business in Paris." Something sharp flashed in his eyes at the mention of his wife's name. Good. Let him sweat. Yes, the acquisition. Very last minute. He was talking too fast, the words tumbling over each other. "This is Margot Sinclair. She's heading up the French division of the tech merger. Margot, this is my sister-in-law, Catriona. She's a pilot, as you can see." Margot extended a perfectly manicured hand. "Lovely to meet you. Your brother-in-law speaks very highly of his family." "I bet he does," Catriona thought, but she shook the offered hand. Margot's grip was firm, confident. Her perfume was expensive, something French and floral. And when she looked at Callum, her eyes held a warmth that went far beyond professional courtesy. "How long are you in Paris?" Catriona asked, watching Callum's face. "Just until Friday," he said quickly. "Packed schedule. Meetings all day tomorrow and Thursday." "All day?" Catriona let the question hang in the air. "That's unfortunate. Paris is beautiful this time of year. Shame you won't have time to enjoy it." Callum's jaw tightened. He knew what she was doing, every word a probe, testing, searching for the truth. "Well, we might find time for dinner. Margot knows the city well." "I'm sure she does." Catriona smiled, and it felt like baring her teeth. Margot, either oblivious to the tension or pretending to be, checked her phone. "Callum, we should go. The car's waiting, and we have that call with New York in an hour." "Right. Of course." He adjusted his grip on his jacket, and that's when Catriona saw it, a small detail that might have meant nothing or might have meant everything. His wedding ring was slightly turned, the band facing inward against his palm. As if he'd been twisting it. Fidgeting with it. Hiding it. "Give my love to Isla," Margot said brightly, and Catriona wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. "Give my love to the wife I'm probably sleeping with her husband." "I will," Catriona said. "In fact, I'm calling her tonight. I'm sure she'd love to hear all about your trip, Callum. The meetings. The business dinners. All of it." Callum's eyes locked on hers, and in that moment, they both understood. This was a warning. A line drawn in the sand. "I see you. I know. And I won't stay silent." "We should catch up properly," Callum said, his voice tight. Maybe when I'm back in Glasgow. Family dinner. Maybe, Catriona said, knowing they both understood that dinner would never happen. They moved past her, Margot already chattering about the car service, and Callum threw one last look over his shoulder, part plea, part threat. Then they were gone, disappearing into the jetway, into Paris, into whatever lies they'd constructed for themselves. Catriona stood in the cockpit doorway, her pulse racing, her hands finally shaking now that no one could see. You know those passengers. Sarah appeared beside her, curiosity bright in her eyes. The man is my brother-in-law, Catriona said slowly. Supposedly on a business trip. Sarah glanced down the jetway where Callum and Margot had vanished. Oh. The single syllable carried a world of understanding. Sarah had been a flight attendant for 20 years. She'd seen every variation of human behavior at 35,000 feet. That's complicated. You could say that. What are you going to do? It was the question, wasn't it? The only question that mattered. Catriona had 2 days in Paris before her return flight. 2 days to investigate, to gather evidence, to be absolutely certain before she dropped a bomb into her sister's life. Or she could call Isla right now, tell her what she'd seen, and let the pieces fall where they would. I don't know, Catriona admitted. But I have to figure it out fast. The Crew Hotel was a modest place near the airport. Clean, functional, designed for people who needed sleep more than luxury. Catriona dropped her luggage in her room and sat on the edge of the bed, her phone heavy in her hand. She could see Isla's last message on the screen. Have a great flight. Wish you could bring me back some French pastries. XX. Her sister. Her baby sister, who'd grown up sharing a bedroom the size of a closet, who'd cried on Catriona's shoulder when boys broke her heart, who'd called her at 2 a.m. when their father died, who'd asked her to be maid of honor at a wedding Catriona had secretly dreaded. Isla, who'd traded one kind of poverty for another, empty pockets for an empty marriage. Catriona opened her contacts, her thumb hovering over Isla's name. 1 call. 10 minutes. I saw Callum on my flight with another woman, and it didn't look like business. Simple. Direct. True. But then what? Isla breaks down in that massive house, alone, while Catriona is 700 miles away in a hotel room. Isla, who'd built her entire identity around being Mrs. Callum Buchanan, who'd left behind her friends and her job and her dreams to fit into his world. If you discovered your sibling's partner was cheating, would you tell them immediately, or would you investigate first to be absolutely certain? What would true sisterhood demand in this moment? Welcome back, my incredible viewers. Your comments from the last video have been absolutely overwhelming. I can see how deeply you're all connecting with the story, and the theories you've been sharing are absolutely brilliant. Some of you are surprisingly close to the truth of what's coming next. But before we continue, don't forget to smash that like button if you're enjoying what you're seeing. Your support means the world to me and helps this channel grow. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss any of our uploads. We're building an amazing community here, and I don't want you to miss out on what's coming. And please, share this video with your friends, family, or anyone who would love this type of content. The more people we can bring into this community, the better it gets for everyone. Your engagement in the comments has been incredible, and I love reading every single one of your thoughts and theories. Keep them coming. Now, let's go in depth into the story. No. This required more than a phone call. This required certainty, evidence, and Catriona's physical presence when Isla's world came crashing down. She texted instead, landed safely. Paris is gorgeous. Call you tomorrow. I want to hear everything about what you've been up to. Love you. XX. The response came quickly. Miss you already. Enjoy the city. Bring me back a story. XX. Catriona stared at the message, her throat tight. Oh, I'll bring you back a story, Yin. Just not the one you're expecting. She changed out of her uniform and into jeans and a sweater, pulled her auburn hair into a ponytail, and studied herself in the mirror. She looked tired, shadows under her green eyes, lines around her mouth that hadn't been there a year ago. 35 years old, unmarried, married to her job, and now about to become a private investigator for her sister's marriage. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered warily. Hello. Catriona. Callum's voice, urgent and low. We need to talk. I don't think we do. Please. Just give me 5 minutes. There's a cafe across from your hotel. Le Petit Coin. I can see you're there. I had to know which hotel the crew was staying at. A chill ran down her spine. He'd tracked her down. Already. That's borderline stalking, Callum. 5 minutes. Please. For Isla. The words were perfectly chosen, and he knew it. Catriona closed her eyes, warring with herself. But curiosity won. She wanted to hear what lies he'd constructed, what story he'd spin. 10 minutes, she said. And only because I want to look you in the eye when you try to explain yourself. She hung up before he could respond. Le Petit Coin was a corner cafe with rickety tables and strong coffee, the kind of place where Parisians actually went rather than tourists. Catriona ordered an espresso and sat at a table near the window, watching the street. Callum arrived exactly 5 minutes later, alone. He'd changed clothes, designer jeans now, a cashmere sweater, leather jacket. Trying to look casual, approachable. It didn't work. He still radiated wealth and privilege, still moved like a man who expected the world to rearrange itself for his convenience. He sat down across from her without asking permission. Thank you for meeting me. Talk, Catriona said flatly. You have 9 minutes left. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands clasped. The posture of sincerity. What you saw on the plane, it's not what you think. Really? Because what I think is that you had your hand on another woman's knee and looked at her the way you used to look at my sister. Margot is a colleague. A business partner. That's all. Does Isla know you're staying at the same hotel? Going to the same dinners? That you touch her knee when you think no one's watching? Callum's jaw clenched. You're making something out of nothing. We're working on a multi-million-pound acquisition. We have to spend time together. Yes, we're friendly. That's how business works at this level. Don't patronize me, Callum. I may not live in a mansion, but I'm not stupid. I never said. Are you sleeping with her? The question landed like a slap. Callum recoiled, his eyes widening. Jesus, Catriona. No, absolutely not. But you want to. Silence. Long and damning. I love your sister, he finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. That's not what I asked. He looked away, watching the Parisian street through the window. A woman walked past with a small dog. A man on a bicycle nearly collided with a taxi. Normal life, continuing around them while this moment crystallized into something that couldn't be undone. Marriage is complicated, Callum said quietly. You wouldn't understand. Try me. He turned back to her, and for the first time, she saw something honest in his face. Weariness. Maybe even regret. Isla is perfect. She's beautiful and kind and everything I thought I wanted. But she's also distant. We live in the same house, but we barely know each other anymore. She has her charities and her book club and her perfect life, and I have my work. We're like roommates who happen to be married. So your solution is to find connection elsewhere. I haven't done anything wrong, he insisted. Margot and I are friends. Maybe there's potential for more, but I haven't acted on it. I'm here doing business, and yes, I enjoy her company. Is that a crime? Catriona wanted to throw her coffee in his face. You're building toward betrayal and calling it friendship. That's worse than honest cheating because at least that would be authentic. What do you want from me, Catriona? A confession? Fine. I'm not happy. Isla's not happy. We've been pretending for years. But I haven't betrayed her. Not technically. Not technically is the refuge of cowards. His eyes flashed. Easy for you to judge from your one-bedroom flat and your simple life. You don't know what it's like to build an empire, to carry the weight of hundreds of employees, to make decisions that affect entire economies. Sometimes I need someone who understands that world. Isla doesn't want to understand it. She just wants to be comfortable. Did you ever ask what she wanted? Or did you just give her money and assume that was enough? The words hit home. She saw it in his flinch. I've given her everything. Except yourself. They stared at each other across the small table, and Catriona saw the truth clearly now. Callum wasn't a villain. He was just a man who'd mistaken wealth for happiness, success for connection, and now found himself in a marriage that looked perfect from the outside but was hollow at its core. But that didn't excuse him. And it didn't change what she had to do. "I'm going to tell her," Catriona said quietly. "Tell her what? That you saw me on a plane with a colleague? That I had a professional relationship you're reading too much into? I'm going to tell her that you're building a life that doesn't include her. That whether or not you've physically cheated, you've checked out emotionally. That she deserves better than a man who looks at other women the way you looked at Margot." Callum's hands curled into fists on the table. "If you tell her, you'll destroy her. If I don't tell her, you will. At least this way, she has a choice. She'll hate you for it." "Maybe," Catriona admitted. "But at least she'll know the truth. And she can decide what to do with it." Callum stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You're making a mistake. You're seeing shadows that aren't there and breaking up a marriage over your own suspicions. Am I wrong?" Catriona stood too, meeting his eyes. "Look me in the eye and tell me, swear on your father's grave, that you have no romantic feelings for Margot Sinclair. That you're committed to your marriage. That if I hadn't seen you today, you would have come home Friday and been the faithful husband Isla believes you are." Callum opened his mouth. Closed it. His silence was answer enough. "That's what I thought," Catriona said softly. She walked out of the cafe, leaving him standing there, and didn't look back. Her hands were shaking as she walked back to the hotel, but her mind was clear. She would spend the next day gathering what information she could, maybe follow Callum and Margot, see if her suspicions were confirmed or disproven. And then, when she flew back to Glasgow on Friday, she would sit her sister down and tell her everything. It would break Isla's heart. But living a lie would break it worse. As she reached her hotel room, her phone buzzed. A message from Isla. "Can't wait to talk tomorrow. I have some news to share with you too. Something exciting. Call me whenever you can. Love you. XX." Catriona sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the message, her heart sinking. Exciting news. In that enormous, empty house. From her sister who barely had a life outside of being Mrs. Buchanan. Oh God. What if Isla was pregnant? The thought sent ice through her veins. A baby would complicate everything, make the stakes impossibly high, turn a painful truth into a devastating one. But it might also be something else. Something simpler. A new charity project. Maybe. Or a trip she was planning. Catriona would find out tomorrow. Tonight, she had surveillance to plan. The Parisian dawn came slowly, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold that reminded Catriona of watercolors bleeding into wet paper. She'd barely slept, her mind churning through scenarios and possibilities, each one worse than the last. She'd made a decision sometime around 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling of her hotel room. She would follow Callum today. Not because she wanted to play detective, but because she needed certainty. Isla deserved more than suspicions and half-truths. She deserved evidence. Concrete, undeniable proof that would either vindicate Callum or condemn him. By 7 a.m., Catriona was dressed in dark jeans, a black jacket, and trainers, anonymous clothes that would let her blend into the Parisian crowds. She'd looked up Callum's company online during her sleepless night and found that Buchanan Industries had recently acquired a controlling stake in a French tech firm called Novatech. Their headquarters were in the 8th arrondissement, near the Champs-Élysées. She also found something else. A corporate press release from 3 months ago announcing Margot Sinclair as the new director of European operations. The photo showed a woman in a power suit, dark hair perfectly styled, standing next to Callum at some ribbon-cutting ceremony. They weren't touching in the photo, but they were standing close, closer than colleagues typically stood. The press release was dated February. 3 months of working together. 3 months of business dinners and late-night strategy sessions and flights to Paris. How long did it take for just colleagues to become something more? Catriona grabbed a coffee and a croissant from the hotel lobby. The croissant tasted like sawdust in her anxious stomach, and took the RER train into the city. Paris rushed past the windows, suburbs giving way to grand boulevards, the Seine glittering in the morning light, the Eiffel Tower rising above the rooftops like a promise. Isla had always wanted to visit Paris. She'd shown Catriona pictures from magazines, talked dreamily about walking along the Seine, visiting the Louvre, eating pastries in sidewalk cafes. "Maybe for our anniversary," she'd said once. "Callum keeps promising we'll go." But Callum had come to Paris without her. With Margot instead. The Novatech building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, the kind of architecture that announced its importance. Catriona positioned herself at a cafe across the street, another overpriced espresso, another croissant she wouldn't eat, and waited. She felt ridiculous. This wasn't her. She was a pilot, not a private investigator. She belonged in a cockpit, making decisions based on instruments and training and clear-cut procedures. Not sitting in a Parisian cafe, spying on her brother-in-law like some character from a bad thriller. But for Isla, she'd be ridiculous. For Isla, she'd be anything. At 8:47 a.m., a black Mercedes pulled up to the Novatech building. Catriona's heart kicked into a higher gear as Callum emerged from the back seat, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing animatedly. He looked every inch the billionaire businessman, charcoal suit, confident stride, the world bending around him. Margot emerged from the same car. Not from a separate car. Not arriving independently. From the same car, smoothing down her dress, emerald green today, paired with heels that probably cost more than Catriona's monthly salary. They'd shared a car. Which meant they'd shared a hotel. Possibly a room. Catriona's hands tightened around her coffee cup. It doesn't prove anything, she told herself. They could have separate rooms in the same hotel. It's efficient. It makes sense for business. But the way Margot touched Callum's arm as they walked toward the building, casual, familiar, proprietary, that spoke of intimacy. That spoke of private jokes and shared mornings and a comfort that went beyond quarterly reports and acquisition strategies. They disappeared into the building, and Catriona sat back, exhaling slowly. So they'd arrived together. That was something. Not proof of infidelity, not yet, but another piece of the puzzle falling into place. She needed more. The morning stretched into afternoon. Catriona kept her vigil, feeling increasingly like a fool but unable to walk away. She moved between cafes, bought unnecessary coffees, pretended to read a book she'd downloaded to her phone. Other patrons came and went, business people on lunch breaks, tourists consulting maps, locals who belonged to this city in a way Catriona never would. At 1:30 p.m., Callum and Margot emerged again. But this time, they weren't alone. 3 other people accompanied them, all in business attire, all carrying the air of executives with important places to be. The group walked 2 blocks to a restaurant with white tablecloths visible through the windows. A business lunch. Perfectly innocent. Catriona felt her certainty wavering. Maybe Callum had been telling the truth. Maybe she was seeing betrayal where there was only business. Maybe. Her phone rang. Isla. Catriona's thumb hovered over the decline button, but guilt surged through her. She couldn't avoid her sister. Not now, when Isla was waiting for her call. Hey, Wei Yin, she answered, trying to sound normal. How are you? Cat. I've been waiting all morning to hear from you. How's Paris? Is it as beautiful as the pictures? It's stunning, Catriona said, watching the restaurant where her brother-in-law was probably ordering wine that cost more than her airfare. I wish you could see it. Me too. Maybe next year. Isla's voice carried that wistful quality that always made Catriona's heart ache. Callum keeps saying we'll travel more once things settle down at work. But you know how it is, there's always another deal, another acquisition. Yeah, I know exactly how it is, Catriona thought bitterly. You mentioned you had exciting news. Oh, yes. Isla's voice lifted, genuine happiness flooding through. Cat, I know this might sound silly, but I've enrolled in university. Catriona straightened in her chair. What? I know, at my age, going back to school. But remember how I always wanted to study literature? How I used to talk about maybe teaching someday? I remember. Catriona remembered everything about Isla's dreams, all the things her sister had set aside when she'd married Callum. Well, I applied to the University of Glasgow for their mature student program. English literature. And I got in. Cat. I start in September. Isla was talking faster now, excitement bubbling through her words. I didn't tell Callum yet, I wanted to be sure first. But I did it. I'm actually doing something for myself. Catriona felt tears prick her eyes. Isla, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. Are you? You don't think it's foolish? Going back to school at 32. It's the bravest thing you've done in years. I feel alive again. Like I'm remembering who I was before I became Mrs. Buchanan. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Catriona's voice was thick. When are you telling Callum? When he gets back Friday. I'm nervous. You know how he is about my projects. He thinks I should focus on charity work, being the perfect corporate wife. But this is different. This is mine. Across the street, through the restaurant windows, Catriona could see Callum laughing at something one of his colleagues said. Margot sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. What would you do if you discovered the truth would destroy your sister's newfound courage and joy? Is there ever a right time to deliver devastating news, or does waiting only make the betrayal worse? Cat? You still there? Yeah. Sorry. I'm here. Catriona forced herself to focus. Isla, I'm so happy for you. This is exactly what you need. I thought so too. And you know what else? I've been thinking about what you said, about that book you sent me. The woman who left her husband and opened a bookshop. What about it? You were trying to tell me something, weren't you? That I didn't have to stay in a marriage that makes me feel invisible. That there are other ways to live. Catriona's throat tightened. I just wanted you to know you have options. That's all. I know. And I appreciate it. But here's the thing. I think going back to university might save my marriage. Give me something of my own so I'm not just waiting around for Callum all the time. Maybe that's what we've been missing. Me having my own life, my own purpose. Maybe that'll make us equals again. The hope in Isla's voice was almost unbearable. Maybe, Catriona managed. Listen, I should go. I have a crew meeting in a bit. Of course. Enjoy Paris. And Cat, thank you for always believing in me. Always. Wee Yin. Love you. Love you too. The call ended, and Catriona sat in the afternoon sunlight, feeling like she'd been hollowed out. Isla was finally finding herself again, stepping back into the dreams she'd abandoned, hoping that becoming whole would heal her marriage. And Catriona was about to tell her that her marriage might already be broken beyond repair. Unless she was wrong. Unless Callum really was just conducting business, and Margot really was just a colleague, and the intimacy Catriona sensed was nothing more than her own protective instincts running wild. She had to be sure. The business lunch lasted 2 hours. When the group emerged, they were all smiling, clearly satisfied with whatever deals they discussed. Callum shook hands with the 3 colleagues, who headed in the opposite direction. That left just Callum and Margot standing on the Parisian sidewalk in the afternoon sun. And then Callum did something that made Catriona's breath catch. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Margot's ear, a gesture so tender, so intimate, that it couldn't be mistaken for anything professional. Margot smiled up at him, and even from across the street, Catriona could see the warmth in her eyes. They didn't kiss. Didn't embrace. But they stood close, talking quietly, existing in a bubble of two that excluded the rest of the world. Then Margot glanced at her watch and said something. Callum nodded, and they walked together back toward the Novatech building, side by side, comfortable in each other's space. Catriona felt sick. She'd seen enough. Maybe they hadn't physically consummated the affair, maybe Callum was technically telling the truth about not sleeping with her. But emotionally, he'd already left Isla. His heart was already somewhere else. And that, in some ways, was worse than simple physical betrayal. She followed them for the rest of the afternoon, feeling more wretched with each passing hour. They emerged from the building at 6 p.m., got into another car together, and were driven to the Four Seasons George V, one of the most expensive hotels in Paris. Of course. Callum wouldn't stay anywhere less than the best. Catriona watched from across the street as they entered the hotel together, disappearing into the gilded lobby. She gave them 5 minutes, then followed, her heart hammering. The lobby was absurdly luxurious, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, flower arrangements that probably cost more than her car. Catriona felt utterly out of place in her jeans and jacket, but she walked with purpose to the front desk, channeling every ounce of captain authority she possessed. "Good evening," she said to the impeccably dressed clerk. "I'm supposed to meet my colleague, Mr. Callum Buchanan. Could you tell me his room number?" The clerk's expression turned apologetic. "I'm sorry, madam, but we cannot give out guest information. However, I can call up to his room and let him know you're here." "That's fine. Thank you." The clerk picked up the phone, pressed a few numbers. "Yes, hello. I have a visitor in the lobby asking for Mr. Buchanan." "I see. And the name?" The clerk looked at Catriona expectantly. Catriona MacLeod. His sister-in-law. The clerk repeated the name into the phone, then paused, listening. Their eyebrows rose slightly. I see. Yes, of course. Thank you. They hung up and turned back to Catriona with a carefully neutral expression. Mr. Buchanan says he's in a meeting and cannot be disturbed. He suggests you call him later this evening. Of course. Thank you. Catriona turned to leave, but then, as if an afterthought, said casually, I don't suppose Miss Sinclair is available? She might be able to help me instead. The clerk consulted their computer. Miss Sinclair is also unavailable at the moment. Are they in the same meeting? The clerk's professional mask slipped for just a second, a flash of discomfort, of knowing more than they could say. I couldn't say, madam. But Catriona knew. The hesitation, the careful phrasing, the clerk had probably connected the same call to both rooms. Or worse, Margot had answered from Callum's room. Thank you for your help, Catriona said, and walked out of the hotel feeling like she'd swallowed stones. She found herself walking aimlessly through Paris as the sun set, painting the buildings in shades of amber and rose. The city was beautiful in that effortless way that old European cities were, every corner a postcard, every street a story. Tourists snapped photos of the Eiffel Tower. Couples walked hand in hand along the Seine. Life, in all its messy, complicated glory, continued around her. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. I know you followed us today. Meet me at Café de Flore at 8 p.m. Come alone. Callum. Catriona stared at the message, anger flaring hot in her chest. He'd known she was following him? Had he seen her, or had hotel security alerted him? Either way, he knew. She typed back, fine. But this is the last conversation we're having. After tonight, I tell Isla everything. The response came quickly, fair enough. Just give me a chance to explain. Café de Flore was famous, one of those historic Parisian institutions where Hemingway and Sartre had supposedly sipped coffee and debated philosophy. Now it was full of wealthy tourists and Parisians who wanted to be seen in the right places. Catriona found a table on the terrace and ordered a glass of wine she didn't want. Callum arrived exactly at 8 p.m., alone. He looked tired, she noticed, shadows under his eyes, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. He sat down across from her without preamble. How long have you been following us? He asked. Long enough. The hotel called me after you left. Said my sister-in-law came looking for me and Ms. Sinclair. Clever. Using two different last names. Makes it less obvious you're sharing a room. Callum flinched. We're not. We have separate rooms. Separate floors, actually. But you're in those rooms together. He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I need to know, Catriona said quietly, leaning forward. Have you slept with her? Callum looked away, watching the Parisian evening unfold around them. Finally, he said, no. Not completely. What the hell does not completely mean? We've kissed. A few times. And last night, we held each other. Talked until dawn. But we didn't have sex. I swear. Oh, well, that makes it so much better, Catriona said bitterly. You haven't technically committed adultery, just emotional infidelity. I'm sure Isla will be thrilled. I know how it sounds. Do you love her, Margot? The question hung between them like a physical thing. Callum's hands curled around his coffee cup, and when he finally looked at Catriona, his eyes held genuine pain. I don't know, he said hoarsely. I don't even know what love means anymore. I thought I loved Isla. I did love her, at the beginning. But somewhere along the way, we just stopped seeing each other. She became this perfect, untouchable thing in my house, and I became the man who funded her perfect life. And Margot, she sees me. The real me, not just the bank account and the name. She challenges me, argues with me, makes me think. She makes me feel alive again. So you're having an emotional affair and calling it aliveness. Do you hear yourself? What do you want me to say, Catriona? That I'm a terrible person? Fine. I'm a terrible person. I made vows I can't keep, built a marriage I don't know how to fix, and fell for someone else because it was easier than trying to remember why I married Isla in the first place. The honesty in his voice was unexpected, And for a moment, Catriona almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Isla enrolled in university, she said quietly. English literature. She's going back to school, trying to find herself again, hoping it'll save your marriage. Callum's face crumpled. Jesus. She's excited, Callum. Happy, for the first time in years. She thinks having her own life will make you equals again. She thinks it'll fix what's broken. It won't. I know. Because what's broken is you. He looked up sharply, anger flashing in his eyes. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. Isla gave up everything for you. Her job, her friends, her dreams. She molded herself into the wife you wanted. And now you're upset because she became exactly what you made her. And instead of talking to her, instead of trying to fix it, you found someone new and shiny to make you feel better about yourself. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Catriona's voice was hard now, all the compassion draining away. You're a coward, Callum. And tomorrow, I'm flying home, and I'm telling my sister everything. And she'll do what she needs to do, leave you, forgive you, whatever. But at least she'll have the truth. She'll have a choice. Callum leaned back in his chair, defeated. Can you at least wait until Monday? Give me the weekend to talk to her first. Let me be the one to tell her, not you. Why should I? Because I owe her that much. Because she should hear it from her husband, not her sister. Because... He swallowed hard. Because I do love her, Catriona. Maybe not the way I should, but I never wanted to hurt her. Please. Let me do this right, at least. Catriona wanted to say no. Wanted to fly home tomorrow and tell Isla everything immediately. But she saw the genuine remorse in Callum's eyes, heard the crack in his voice. Monday, she said finally. You have until Monday morning. If you haven't told her by then, I will. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because Isla deserves to hear the truth from someone who claims to love her, even if that person is you. She stood, dropping euros on the table for her untouched wine. And Callum? If you hurt her more than you already have, if you lie to her or manipulate her or make her feel like this is somehow her fault, I will make it my mission to destroy you. Sister to sister, I promise you that. She walked away, leaving him sitting alone at the famous cafe, and didn't look back. The flight back to Glasgow on Friday was blessedly uneventful. Catriona flew on autopilot again, her mind already home, already with Isla, already preparing for the fallout. She had given Callum until Monday. 3 days for him to find the courage to be honest with his wife. 3 days for Isla to enjoy her excitement about university before her world came crashing down. It felt like a gift and a cruelty all at once. As the plane descended through the clouds toward Glasgow, Catriona looked out at her city, the Clyde snaking through the landscape, the cranes of the shipyards, the tenements and towers that made up home. Somewhere down there, Isla was waiting for her billionaire husband to come home, believing in a marriage that was already over. By Monday, everything would change. Catriona just hoped her sister was strong enough to survive it. The weekend crawled by like a wounded animal. Catriona spent Saturday in her flat, staring at her phone, waiting for a call from Isla that would mean Callum had told her. Waiting for tears, for anger, for the sound of her sister's world breaking apart. But the call never came. Instead, Isla texted cheerful updates. Callum's home. Making his favorite dinner tonight. XX and later. He seems tired from the trip but says the acquisition went well. Fingers crossed for a quiet weekend together. XX. Each message was a knife twisting in Catriona's gut. Sunday morning, Isla called, voice bright and normal. Fancy coming to lunch? I'm making that lamb roast you love, and I could use the company. Callum's been in his study all morning on calls. Work never stops, right? Catriona wanted to scream into the phone. He's a coward. He's lying to you. He promised me he'd tell you, and he's hiding in his study instead. But she said, I'd love to, but I've got a flight to Amsterdam this afternoon. Rain check. Of course. Next weekend then. I want to tell you all about my university plans. I've been researching courses, and Kat, I'm so excited I can barely sleep. The excitement in Isla's voice was unbearable. After the call, Catriona texted Callum. You have 24 hours. If you don't tell her by tomorrow evening, I'm coming to your house and doing it myself. No response. Monday morning arrived grey and damp, typical Glasgow weather that matched Catriona's mood. She had the day off, a rare occurrence, and she'd already decided how she'd spend it. If Callum hadn't called Isla by noon, she was driving to Milngavie and ending this charade herself. At 10:47 a.m., her phone rang. Isla. Catriona's heart stopped. This was it. Callum had finally told her. Isla. Cat, something weird is happening. Isla's voice was shaking, but not with tears. With confusion. I got a call from Callum's office this morning. His assistant, asking about his schedule. But here's the thing, Callum's schedule is usually packed tight, right? Every meeting planned weeks in advance. Yeah? She asked if I knew why he'd blocked out the entire day today. No meetings, no calls, completely cleared his calendar. She said he's never done that before, not in the 8 years she's worked for him. Cat, I think something's wrong. What if he's sick? What if it's serious and he's been hiding it? Relief and dread crashed through Catriona simultaneously. He was going to tell her. Today. He'd cleared his schedule to finally have the conversation he should have had days ago. Where is he now? Catriona asked. Here. At home. He's been in his study since 7 this morning. Won't come out. Won't eat. I knocked on the door an hour ago, and he just said he needed time to think. Cat, you're scaring me. Do you know something? Did something happen in Paris? When the moment of truth finally arrives, when you must choose between protecting someone from pain or giving them the power to make their own choices, which is the greater act of love? Catriona closed her eyes. Isla, I think Callum has something he needs to tell you. And I think you need to go to him and ask him directly what's going on. What do you mean? What kind of something? It's not my place to say. But you need to talk to him. Today. Now. And whatever he tells you, I want you to know I'm here. I'm always here. Silence on the other end, heavy with dawning realization. Catriona, you're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. But you need to have this conversation with Callum, not me. Okay. Okay. Isla's voice was small now, childlike. Can you come here? After, whatever this is, I think I'm going to need you. Text me when you're ready. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I love you, Cat. I love you too. So much. The call ended, and Catriona sat in her quiet flat, waiting. She made coffee she didn't drink. Stared at the ceiling. Counted the minutes. An hour passed. Then another. At 1:23 p.m., her phone buzzed. Not a call, but a text from Isla. Come now. Please. Catriona grabbed her keys and ran. The drive to Milngavie normally took 30 minutes. Catriona made it in 22, her heart racing faster than the speedometer. The Buchanan estate sprawled behind tall gates and manicured hedges, a modern fortress of glass and stone that had always felt more like a museum than a home. She pressed the intercom. No answer. She pressed again, then tried the code Isla had given her years ago for emergencies. The gate swung open with a soft hum. The driveway curved through perfectly maintained gardens, not a leaf out of place, not a flower wilting. Even in crisis, the Buchanan estate maintained its facade of perfection. Catriona parked beside Callum's Range Rover and Isla's Mercedes, both cars worth more than most people earned in a year, and approached the front door. It opened before she could knock. Isla stood in the doorway, and Catriona's heart broke. Her sister had been crying, mascara tracked down her cheeks, her eyes red and swollen, her face blotchy. She wore yoga pants and an oversized jumper, her hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She looked young and lost and utterly devastated. He told me, Isla whispered. Everything. Catriona pulled her into a fierce embrace, and Isla collapsed against her, sobbing into her shoulder the way she'd done when they were children and the world was too big and scary. I've got you, Catriona murmured, holding her sister tight. I've got you, I'm here. They stood like that for a long moment, in the doorway of the house that suddenly felt more like a prison than a palace. Finally, Isla pulled back, wiping at her face with shaking hands. Come inside, she said hoarsely. I need to tell you everything. The house was silent, that oppressive quiet that comes after something shatters. Isla led Catriona to the kitchen, A vast space of marble countertops and professional appliances that always made Catriona think of restaurants rather than homes. They sat at the breakfast bar, and Isla wrapped her hands around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. "He's in love with her," Isla said, staring into the mug. "Margot." He said he didn't mean for it to happen, that it just developed. Over months of working together. Late nights at the office. Business trips. He said he tried to fight it, but she understands him in ways I never did. Catriona's jaw clenched. "That's bullshit." "Is it?" Isla looked up, and her eyes held a terrible clarity. "Cat, be honest with me. Have I been a good wife?" "That's not the right question." "Have I?" Isla's voice cracked. "Because I've been thinking all morning, trying to figure out where I went wrong. And the truth is, I stopped trying years ago. I stopped asking about his work because it bored me. Stopped challenging him because it was easier to just agree. I became this ornament in his house. Beautiful and expensive and completely useless." "Isla, that's his fault, not yours. He wanted you to be that way." "Did he? Or did I just assume that's what he wanted because it was easier than having an actual personality?" Isla laughed bitterly. "God, listen to me. Even now, I'm blaming myself for his affair." Did he say if they slept together?" "He says no. Says they kissed a few times, spent nights talking, held each other. Emotional intimacy, he called it." Isla's voice dripped with sarcasm. "As if that's somehow better than physical cheating. As if giving someone your heart isn't worse than giving them your body." Catriona reached across the counter and gripped her sister's hand. "What else did he say?" "That he doesn't know what he wants anymore. That he cares about me, Cat, like I'm a pet or a charity project, but that he's in love with Margot. That she makes him feel alive." Isla's fingers tightened around Catriona's. "And you know the worst part? I understand. Because I haven't felt alive in years either. I've just been existing. Going through the motions of being Mrs. Callum Buchanan while forgetting how to be Isla." "That's why you applied to university," Catriona said softly. "Yeah. I was trying to remember who I was before all this. Before the money and the house and the perfect life that turned out to be a beautiful lie." Isla pulled her hand away and wrapped her arms around herself. "He apologized. Said he never meant to hurt me. Asked if we could try counseling, work through it, save the marriage." "What did you say?" Isla was quiet for a long moment, staring at the kitchen island's marble surface. "I asked him if he'd stop seeing her. If he'd cut all ties with Margot, leave her off the French acquisition, never speak to her again outside of absolutely necessary business. And..." He hesitated. "Just for a second. But I saw it. He couldn't promise me that. Which means it's already too late, isn't it? You can't save a marriage when one person's heart is already somewhere else." Catriona felt tears burning her own eyes. "I'm so sorry, Isla. I should have told you sooner. I saw them in Paris, on my flight." "I know. He told me you confronted him. That you gave him until today to tell me himself." Isla looked at her sister with something like wonder. "You were trying to protect me. Trying to give me the truth in the gentlest way possible. I should have just told you immediately." "No." Isla shook her head. "You did the right thing. If you told me, I could have convinced myself you were wrong, that you misunderstood. But hearing it from him, seeing his face when he talked about her, there's no ambiguity. No room for denial." They sat in silence for a moment, and then Isla asked the question Catriona had been dreading. "Did you see them together? In Paris?" Catriona wanted to lie, to spare her sister the details. But Isla deserved the truth. All of it. Yes. They arrived at work together, from the same car. Had lunch with colleagues, but the way they looked at each other. She paused, choosing her words carefully. There was intimacy there. Real connection. The kind that doesn't happen overnight. "How long do you think it's been going on?" "I don't know. Months, maybe? Since they started working together on the acquisition." Isla nodded slowly, as if confirming something she'd already suspected. "There were signs. I just didn't want to see them. The late nights that became more frequent. The way he'd smile at his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. How he stopped really seeing me when we were in the same room." She laughed bitterly. I thought we were just settling into comfortable marriage routine. Turns out I was settling into comfortable ignorance. This isn't your fault, Catriona said fiercely. None of this is your fault. Maybe not. But I can't pretend I'm surprised either. When was the last time Callum and I had a real conversation? When did we last laugh together, or even eat a meal without checking our phones? We've been roommates for years, Cat. Just two people living in the same enormous house, leading completely separate lives. That still doesn't excuse what he did. No, it doesn't. Isla's voice hardened. But it does explain it. And it helps me understand what I need to do next. Catriona leaned forward. What do you mean? Isla met her sister's eyes, and for the first time that day, Catriona saw something other than devastation in them. She saw determination. Steel. I'm leaving him, Isla said quietly. Not maybe. Not if things don't improve. I'm leaving. Relief flooded through Catriona. Good. You can stay with me while you figure things out. I don't need to stay with you. A small smile touched Isla's lips. I have money of my own. Remember Aunt Moira's inheritance? The one I never touched because Callum said I should save it. The £50,000. It's grown quite a bit with investments. Nearly 80,000 now. Enough to rent a flat, support myself while I'm at university. Enough to start over. Catriona felt pride surge through her grief. You've been planning this. Not consciously. But maybe part of me knew, even before today. Maybe that's why I applied to university. Why I kept that money separate, in an account Callum doesn't control. Some part of me was preparing for this, even while the rest of me was pretending everything was fine. Where is Callum now? His study. I told him I needed time to think, space to process. He's giving me until tonight to decide if I want to try to save the marriage or end it. Isla's laugh was sharp. As if it's really a decision. As if I'd stay with a man who's in love with someone else, who sees me as a comfortable obligation rather than a partner. What about the house? The assets? Scotland's a shared property country. I'm entitled to half of everything accumulated during the marriage. And before you worry, yes, I've already called a solicitor. Morag Sinclair, remember her? From school. Morag became a lawyer. Family law specialist. She's coming over this evening to talk me through my options. And Cat. Isla's voice softened. She said the first thing I should do is document everything. Get Callum to admit the affair in writing if possible, or at least have witnesses to his confession. I'm your witness. I saw them together in Paris. I'll testify to whatever you need. Thank you. Isla squeezed her sister's hand. I don't know how I'd get through this without you. You'd manage. You're stronger than you think. Am I? Because right now I feel like I'm made of glass, and the slightest touch will shatter me completely. That's shock. It'll pass. And when it does, you'll be furious. And that fury will carry you through. As if summoned by their words, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Both women turned as Callum appeared in the kitchen doorway. He looked haggard, shirt untucked, tie loosened, hair disheveled. His eyes were red, and Catriona realized with some surprise that he'd been crying. Isla, he said hoarsely. Can we talk? Please. Isla stood, her spine straight, her chin lifted. The devastated woman who'd answered the door was gone, replaced by someone harder. Someone who'd been forged in the fire of betrayal and emerged transformed. We can talk, she said coolly. But Catriona stays. I want a witness to this conversation. Callum's eyes flicked to Catriona with something like resentment. This is between husband and wife. No, Isla interrupted. This is between a man who broke his vows and the woman deciding whether to destroy him in divorce court. Catriona stays. The steel in her sister's voice made Catriona want to cheer. This was the Isla from before, the girl who'd stood up to bullies in school, who'd fought for what she believed in, who'd had fire in her belly before Callum's world had dampened it. Callum sagged against the doorframe. Fine. Whatever you want. What I want, Isla said, her voice ice cold, is for you to tell me the truth. All of it. No more careful omissions or technical innocence. Did you sleep with Margot Sinclair? No. I swear. Did you want to? Silence. Damning, terrible silence. That's what I thought, Isla said. Did you tell her you loved her? Isla. Did you tell her you loved her? Callum's shoulders slumped. Yes. In Paris. After Catriona confronted me. I went back to the hotel, and Margot could tell something was wrong, and it all just came out. I told her I was falling in love with her, that I didn't know what to do about my marriage. What did she say? She said she loved me too, that she had for months, but that she wouldn't be the other woman, wouldn't continue the relationship unless I left you. Isla absorbed this like a physical blow, but she didn't flinch. So you came home to tell me. Not because you wanted to save our marriage, but because your mistress gave you an ultimatum. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. Isla's voice rose for the first time. You were fine conducting your emotional affair, keeping us both, until Margot forced your hand. You didn't confess because you felt guilty. You confessed because you got caught and because the woman you actually love won't settle for being second choice. I do feel guilty. But not guilty enough to stop. Not guilty enough to choose me. Not guilty enough to even pretend you're not in love with her. Isla walked toward him, and Catriona saw tears streaming down her sister's face now. But her voice remained steady. I want you to leave. Tonight. Pack a bag and go. Stay at your office, stay at a hotel, stay with Margot for all I care. But I want you out of this house. Isla, please. I'm not finished. She was close to him now, looking up into his face. I want a divorce. A fair one, where we split everything 50-50. You can have the company, the investments, whatever. But I get half the value of this house, half our savings, and a clean break. No fighting, no lawyers dragging this out for years. You give me what I'm entitled to, and I'll give you your freedom. Callum looked like he might argue, but something in Isla's expression stopped him. And if I don't agree? Then I'll make your life hell. I'll drag out the divorce for years. I'll tell everyone who'll listen about your affair. I'll make sure every journalist in Scotland knows that Callum Buchanan, the great businessman, couldn't keep his marriage vows. I'll cost you money, reputation, and time. Isla smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Your choice. Easy divorce or difficult one. Catriona had never been prouder of her sister. Callum stared at Isla for a long moment, and Catriona saw the exact second he realized he'd underestimated his wife. That the woman he'd thought was soft and pliable and easy to manage had a core of steel he'd never bothered to discover. I'll have my lawyer contact yours, he said quietly. And Isla. I am sorry. For what it's worth. It's worth nothing, Isla said. Now get out of my sight. Callum turned and left, his footsteps echoing through the vast house. They heard him climb the stairs, heard movement from the bedroom above as he packed. 20 minutes later, they heard the front door close, heard his car start and pull away. And then silence. Isla stood motionless in the kitchen, staring at the doorway where her husband had stood. Then, slowly, she turned to Catriona. I did it, she whispered. I actually did it. You were magnificent, Catriona said. And then Isla's legs gave out. Catriona caught her as she collapsed, held her as 5 years of pretending and settling and making herself small finally shattered. Isla sobbed against her sister's shoulder, deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient and primal. I loved him, Isla gasped between sobs. God help me, I actually loved him. I know, Yin. I know. How do I do this? How do I start over? One day at a time. 1 hour at a time. One breath at a time. Catriona stroked her sister's hair, the way their mother used to do when they were small. And you don't do it alone. You have me. You have Aunt Morag. You have £80,000 and a university acceptance letter and a whole life waiting for you. I'm scared. Good. That means you're alive. That means you're feeling again. They stayed like that for a long time, two sisters holding each other in a kitchen that cost more than their childhood home, in a house that had never been a home at all. Eventually, Isla's sobs quieted. She pulled back, wiping her face with the back of her hand. I look terrible, don't I? You look like someone who just survived an earthquake. That's exactly what it feels like. Isla took a shaky breath. Kat, will you stay tonight? I don't want to be alone in this house. I'll stay as long as you need me. Thank you. Isla looked around the kitchen, at the expensive appliances, the designer fixtures, the marble and chrome that had never felt like hers. You know what? I don't want to be here at all. Can we go to your place? Your tiny, cluttered, perfect flat where everything is real and nothing is for show. Catriona grinned. Pack a bag. Let's go home. They left the Buchanan estate as the sun set over Glasgow, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Isla took one last look at the house through the car window, and Catriona saw her sister's face transform from grief to something else. Something like relief. You know what the saddest part is? Isla said as they drove away. I'm not even sure I'll miss it. The house, the lifestyle, any of it. I think I've been trapped in that glass cage for so long, I forgot what freedom felt like. Well, you're about to remember, Catriona said. And as they drove through Glasgow toward the flat in Finnieston, toward a future that was uncertain and terrifying and entirely Isla's own, Catriona felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. 3 months later. The September morning broke over Glasgow with unusual brightness, the kind of Scottish sunshine that felt like a gift after weeks of rain. Catriona stood in her kitchen, making coffee for two, watching the Clyde glitter beyond her window. The flat felt different now, fuller somehow, even though Isla had moved out 6 weeks ago. Her phone buzzed with a message. First day jitters. Meet me for lunch after my morning classes? I need to tell you everything. XX. Catriona smiled and typed back. Wouldn't miss it. You've got this. We in. XX. Today was Isla's first day at the University of Glasgow. After everything that had happened, the divorce proceedings, the emotional fallout, the slow, painful work of rebuilding a life from scratch, her sister was finally stepping into the future she'd chosen for herself. The divorce had been mercifully quick, all things considered. Callum had kept his word about a clean break, perhaps motivated by guilt or perhaps just eager to move on with Margot. The lawyers had handled everything with cold efficiency. The house in Milngavie would be sold, and Isla would receive half the proceeds plus half of their joint savings. The prenuptial agreement Callum had insisted on years ago had protected his business assets, but Isla walked away with close to £800,000, enough to buy her own flat, fund her education, and start over with genuine security. Blood money, Isla had called it. The price of 5 years of my life. But she'd taken it. She wasn't foolish enough to refuse out of pride. The first month after leaving the Buchanan estate had been the hardest. Isla had stayed with Catriona for 2 weeks, crying at random moments, during breakfast, while watching television, in the middle of the night when she'd wake from dreams where she was still married, still trapped, still slowly disappearing into the role of Mrs. Buchanan. I don't even know who I am anymore, she'd said one night, curled up on Catriona's couch with a mug of tea. For 5 years, I was Callum's wife. Before that, I was the girl who worked at the boutique. And before that, I was our parents' daughter. But who is Isla MacLeod when she's just Isla? That's what you're going to find out, Catriona had told her. And I think she's going to be extraordinary. The university acceptance letter had been Isla's lifeline. While the lawyers negotiated the divorce settlement, she'd thrown herself into preparing for classes, reading the required texts, joining online forums for mature students, planning her schedule around literature courses with titles like Contemporary Scottish Fiction and The Romantic Poets. I feel like I'm 17 again, she told Catriona, her eyes bright with excitement. Nervous and terrified and completely alive. By the end of August, Isla had found a flat, a small 2-bedroom in the West End, near the university, with hardwood floors and high ceilings and windows that let in floods of light. Nothing like the Buchanan estate with its cold perfection. This place was warm, lived in, real. It's mine, Isla had said when she showed Catriona around, wonder in her voice. Not ours. Not his. Mine. She'd furnished it slowly, carefully, choosing each piece herself rather than hiring an interior designer. Second-hand bookshelf from a charity shop. Sofa from IKEA that she and Catriona had assembled together, laughing over the incomprehensible instructions. Paintings from local artists at the weekend market. A kitchen table where she could spread her textbooks and actually study instead of just existing in a showpiece kitchen. It's perfect, Catriona had told her, and meant it. They met for lunch at a cafe near the university. Not fancy, just a student hangout with good sandwiches and better coffee. Isla arrived flushed and breathless, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore jeans and a jumper, minimal makeup, looking more like herself than she had in years. Kat. She practically threw herself into the chair across from Catriona. Oh my God. It was amazing. Terrifying, but amazing. Tell me everything. Isla launched into a detailed account of her morning, the Gothic lecture hall where her romantic poetry class met, the professor who'd quoted Byron from memory, the other mature students she'd met who were just as nervous as she was. Her hands moved as she talked, animated, alive with energy that had been missing for so long. There's this woman, Fiona, she's 43 and went back to school after her kids left for university. And there's Marcus, who's 28 and worked in finance until he realized he hated it. We're all starting over in different ways, and it's just... Isla paused, searching for words. It's like I found my people, you know? People who chose to change their lives instead of just accepting what they were given. Catriona felt tears prick her eyes. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done this without you. You know that, right? Isla reached across the table and gripped her sister's hand. When everything fell apart, you were there. You didn't judge me for staying with Callum as long as I did, didn't tell me I told you so, just caught me when I fell. That's what sisters do. Still, I owe you everything. You don't owe me anything. Watching you become yourself again, that's payment enough. They ordered sandwiches and coffee, and Isla talked more about her classes, her flat, her plans. She'd joined a book club, started volunteering at a literacy charity, made friends with her neighbors, a gay couple who ran a vintage clothing shop and invited her to dinner parties where people actually talked about books and politics and ideas instead of property values and investment portfolios. I had coffee with Morag last week, Isla said, referring to her solicitor. She said the house sale should finalize by October. Once that's done, I'm officially, legally, completely divorced. How do you feel about that? Isla was quiet for a moment, considering. Relieved. Mostly. Sometimes sad, but not for the marriage, for the time I wasted. 5 years I'll never get back. 5 years of making myself smaller, quieter, more convenient. She looked up, and her eyes were clear. But I'm choosing not to see them as wasted. They taught me what I don't want. And that's valuable too. Very wise. I'm working on it. Isla smiled. My therapist says I'm making progress. You're seeing a therapist? Started 2 months ago. Dr. Elspeth Murray, she's brilliant. Specializes in women rebuilding their lives after divorce or abuse or trauma. Isla paused. I know Callum never hit me or anything, but Dr. Murray says emotional neglect is its own kind of abuse. That slowly erasing yourself to fit someone else's expectations counts as trauma. Catriona felt anger flare again at Callum, but she pushed it down. He wasn't worth the energy. I'm glad you're talking to someone. It helps. She's helping me figure out who I want to be now that I'm not defined by being someone's wife. Isla took a sip of her coffee. Actually, she suggested something, and I wanted to run it by you. What's that? She thinks I should write about my experience. Not publish it or anything. Just process everything by putting it on paper. The marriage, the affair, the divorce, the rebuilding. She says it might help other women who are going through similar things. I think that's a brilliant idea. Really? You don't think it's self-indulgent? Isla, if sharing your story helps even one woman find the courage to leave a marriage that's killing her spirit, then it's the opposite of self-indulgent. It's generous. Isla's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I needed to hear that. Looking back on your life, what's one moment where everything changed? One decision that put you on a completely different path. Share your story. You never know who might need to hear it. They finished their lunch, and Isla checked her watch. I have a seminar at 2. Contemporary Scottish fiction. We're discussing Alastair Gray. Go. Learn. Be brilliant. Isla stood, then hesitated. Kat, there's something else I need to tell you. The serious tone made Catriona's stomach tighten. What is it? I saw Callum last week. At a coffee shop in the city centre. Catriona's hands curled into fists. Did he approach you? No, he didn't see me. But I saw him. Isla's voice was steady. He was with Margot. They were holding hands, laughing, looking at each other the way. She paused. The way I used to dream he'd look at me. I'm sorry. Don't be. Because here's the thing, I didn't feel jealous. I didn't feel heartbroken or angry or any of the things I expected to feel. I just felt nothing. Maybe a little pity for Margot, actually, because she's in for a rude awakening when the honeymoon phase ends and she realizes Callum's first love is his work, not her. That's growth. That's therapy and 3 months of learning to value myself. Isla smiled. But I did realize something watching them. They looked happy. Genuinely happy. And I think maybe Callum and I were never right for each other. Maybe we were just two people who wanted different things and tried to force it to work because we thought we were supposed to. That's very mature of you. Well, I'm trying to be the bigger person. My therapist says holding on to anger only hurts me, not him. So I'm choosing to believe that Callum loved me in his way, and I loved him in mine, but sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes people just grow in different directions. Catriona studied her sister's face, the peace there, the acceptance. 3 months ago, Isla had been shattered. Now she was rebuilding herself into something stronger, more authentic, more whole. You're going to be okay, Catriona said softly. Better than okay. You're going to be happy. I already am, Isla said, and meant it. 6 months later. Winter had settled over Glasgow with its familiar grey dampness, but Catriona barely noticed the weather as she navigated through the crowds at Glasgow Central Station. She was meeting Isla for dinner, a tradition they'd established, every Friday night, no matter what. Her phone buzzed, running 5 minutes late. Got caught up talking to my professor about my essay. Meet you at the restaurant. XX. Catriona smiled and headed to the Italian place they'd chosen, a small, family-run restaurant in the merchant city that served incredible pasta and didn't cost a fortune. The kind of place Isla never would have suggested when she was Mrs. Buchanan. She arrived first and ordered a glass of wine, settling into their usual corner table. Through the window, she could see Glasgow in full holiday mode, Christmas lights strung across the streets, shoppers hurrying through the cold, street musicians playing carols for spare change. Isla burst through the door 10 minutes later, cheeks pink from the cold, eyes sparkling. Sorry. Professor Henderson wanted to talk about my essay on Virginia Woolf, and I completely lost track of time. Good conversation. Incredible. He said my analysis of Mrs. Dalloway was one of the best he'd read from a first-year student. Isla beamed as she shrugged off her coat. Cat, I got a first on that essay. A first. I haven't gotten a grade like that since I was 17. That's amazing. I know. I actually cried when I saw it. Happy tears, but still. Isla settled into her chair, radiating satisfaction. How was your week? Flew to Barcelona twice, Amsterdam once, and had a near miss with some turbulence over the Bay of Biscay. Standard week, really. They ordered dinner, carbonara for Isla, puttanesca for Catriona, and fell into easy conversation. This had become Catriona's favorite part of the week. These Friday dinners where they caught up on everything, laughing and talking and being sisters without the weight of crisis hanging over them. So, Isla said, twirling pasta around her fork. I have news. Good news or bad news? Potentially complicated news. Isla set down her fork. I met someone. Catriona's eyebrows shot up. Met someone? Like, met someone. His name is Daniel. He's in my contemporary Scottish fiction seminar. Mature student like me, he's 35, went back to school after working as a social worker for 10 years. He's kind and funny and smart, and we've been having coffee after class for the past month. And yesterday he asked if I'd like to have dinner with him. Not just coffee. An actual date. Isla's expression was a mixture of excitement and terror. Cat, I don't know if I'm ready. What if it's too soon? What if I'm just using him to feel better about the divorce? What if? Isla. Catriona reached across the table and took her sister's hand. Do you like him? Yes. Does being around him make you happy? Yes. Does he treat you with respect? Make you laugh? See you as a full person, not just a pretty face? All of the above. Then go to dinner with him. Not because you need to be in a relationship, but because you want to. Because you're ready to let someone new into your life, and that's a beautiful thing. Isla bit her lip. What if I'm terrible at dating? I haven't been on a first date in 6 years. I don't even know the rules anymore. There are no rules. Just be yourself, the new, strong, authentic Isla you've become. If Daniel's worth your time, he'll appreciate exactly that. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. You're just scared because the last time you let someone in, they hurt you. But Isla, you can't let Callum's betrayal stop you from ever trusting again. That would be letting him win. Isla was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. You're right. God, when did you become so wise? I've always been wise. You just weren't listening. They laughed, and the tension broke. Isla told Catriona more about Daniel, how he volunteered at a homeless shelter, how he was studying social policy with plans to work in child protection, how he'd once admitted to crying at the end of 1,000 Splendid Suns and wasn't embarrassed about it. He sounds like a good man, Catriona said. He is. And that terrifies me. Isla's voice dropped. What if I'm not ready? What if I mess this up? Then you'll learn from it and try again. That's how life works. When did you become such an optimist? When I watched my sister survive the impossible and come out stronger on the other side. 1 year later. The celebration was held at Isla's flat in the West End, small and intimate, just close friends and family. Catriona arrived with a bottle of champagne and a card she'd spent entirely too long choosing at the shop. Isla opened the door wearing a summer dress and a smile that could have lit up Glasgow. You're here. Come in, come in. Everyone's already arrived. The flat was full of life. Fiona and Marcus from Isla's classes, Daniel, who Catriona had met several times now and thoroughly approved of, Dr. Murray the therapist, Morag the solicitor, and a handful of other people Isla had collected over the past year. The bookshelf that had been half empty was now overflowing. The walls displayed photographs and art. The kitchen table was covered with food that Isla had actually cooked herself. This was what a home looked like. Speech time. Marcus called out, and everyone gathered in the living room with their drinks. Isla stood in the center, Daniel beside her. They'd been officially together for 8 months now, taking things slowly but surely, and held up her glass. Thank you all for coming, she said. A year ago, I wouldn't have believed this moment was possible. A year ago, I was... She paused, choosing her words. I was lost. I'd spent 5 years becoming someone I didn't recognize, living a life that looked perfect from the outside but was hollow inside. And then everything fell apart. My marriage ended. The life I'd built, or thought I'd built, crumbled. She looked at Catriona, and her eyes filled with tears. But my sister caught me when I fell. She reminded me who I was before I'd forgotten. She gave me the courage to choose myself, to start over, to believe I deserved better. Catriona felt her own tears threatening. And all of you, Isla continued, looking around the room. You've been part of my rebuilding. Fiona and Marcus, you made me feel like I belonged at university even when I felt ancient compared to the other students. Dr. Murray, you helped me understand that my worth isn't determined by whether someone else recognizes it. Morag, you fought for me when I didn't know how to fight for myself. She turned to Daniel, and her smile softened. And you showed me that it's possible to trust again. To let someone in without losing myself. To be loved for who I am, not what I represent. Daniel kissed her forehead gently, and Catriona saw the difference between this and what Isla had with Callum. This was real. This was equal. This was 2 whole people choosing each other, not one person trying to complete themselves through another. So tonight, we're celebrating, Isla said, raising her glass higher. Not just me finishing my first year at university with honors, though I'm pretty proud of that. Everyone laughed. But celebrating new beginnings. Second chances. The courage it takes to walk away from what's comfortable and step into the unknown. To everyone here who's had to start over, you're braver than you know. To new beginnings, everyone chorused, raising their glasses. The party continued late into the evening. Catriona found herself on the small balcony, looking out over the West End's rooftops, when Isla joined her. Thank you, Isla said quietly. For everything. For seeing what I couldn't see. For refusing to let me stay trapped. For being my sister. I didn't do anything except tell you the truth. You did more than that. You believed I was strong enough to handle it, even when I didn't believe it myself. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, and then Isla said, I heard from Callum's lawyer last week. Catriona tensed. What did they want? Nothing bad. Just finalizing the last details of the house sale. But they mentioned. Callum and Margot got married. 3 months ago. Registry office, just the two of them. How do you feel about that? Isla considered the question seriously. Happy for them, actually. Not in a bitter way, genuinely happy. I hope they make each other happy. I hope Margot gets the version of Callum that I never did. And I hope Callum learned something from our marriage ending. You're a better person than I am. No, I'm just free. And freedom makes it easy to wish everyone well, even people who hurt you. Isla leaned her head on Catriona's shoulder. The divorce taught me something important, that I'd rather be alone and whole than partnered and broken. That it's better to have a small life that's authentically mine than a grand life that belongs to someone else. Although, Catriona said with a smile, you're not exactly alone anymore. Isla blushed. Daniel's different. He doesn't try to change me or mold me or make me smaller. He celebrates when I succeed, supports me when I struggle, and gives me space to be myself. That's what partnership should be. Think you'll marry him? Maybe. Someday. If we both want that. But I'm in no rush. I'm enjoying just being Isla for a while. Finding out what I like, what I dream about, who I'm meant to be. She straightened up and looked at her sister. You know what the best part of this whole year has been? What? Remembering that I'm more than someone's wife or daughter or girlfriend. I'm a student, a friend, a sister, a volunteer, a reader, a thinker. I'm complicated and flawed and still figuring things out. And that's exactly as I should be. Catriona pulled her sister into a fierce hug. I'm so damn proud of you. I'm pretty proud of me too. They went back inside to rejoin the party, and Catriona watched Isla move through her chosen family, laughing with Marcus, debating poetry with Fiona, kissing Daniel's cheek as she passed, being wholly, authentically, beautifully herself. This was the victory. Not revenge against Callum. Not even the financial settlement or the university degree. The real victory was watching Isla reclaim her own life, piece by piece, and build something real from the rubble of what had fallen apart. 2 years later. Catriona's phone buzzed during pre-flight checks for morning flight to Paris. The message was from Isla, with a photo attached. The photo showed Isla standing in front of a small bookshop, shabby but charming, with a hand-painted sign reading the second chapter, New and Used Books. Isla was grinning, holding a key, looking happier than Catriona had ever seen her. The message read, Remember that book you sent me? About the woman who opened a bookshop in Edinburgh? I'm doing it. Using my inheritance money plus a small business loan. Opens next month. Turns out I was taking notes the whole time. Thank you for showing me it was possible. Love you. XX. Catriona felt tears blur her vision. Her co-pilot, James, glanced over with concern. Everything all right, Captain? Everything's perfect, Catriona said, wiping her eyes and smiling. My sister just started her second chapter. Outside the cockpit window, the morning sun was rising over Glasgow, painting the city gold. The same city where 2 sisters had grown up in a tiny flat, dreaming of escape. One had found freedom in the sky. The other had found it by finally landing on solid ground. Different paths. Different journeys. But both leading home, to the truth of who they'd always been meant to be. Catriona sent back a message. Proud doesn't even begin to cover it. I'll be your first customer. Save me the best chair by the window. XX. Then she completed her pre-flight checks, requested clearance from the tower, and lifted off into the morning sky. Below, Glasgow fell away, the Clyde snaking through the city, the rooftops and towers, and somewhere in the West End, a small bookshop where miracles began with a single choice to tell the truth. Sometimes love meant breaking someone's heart. Sometimes it meant holding them while they shattered. And sometimes it meant watching them piece themselves back together into something even more beautiful than before. Catriona smiled as she banked east toward Paris, the same route she'd flown 2 years ago when everything changed. But this time, she wasn't carrying secrets or devastating truths. She was carrying hope. And that, she decided, was a much better cargo. Have you ever had to deliver a painful truth to someone you love? Or has someone in your life been brave enough to show you a reality you were avoiding? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes the hardest truths lead to the most beautiful transformations, and your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. This story explored themes of sisterhood, betrayal, courage, and ultimately, the redemptive power of choosing yourself. Isla's journey from trapped wife to independent woman embodied the victory and reunion promised. Not a romantic reunion, but something deeper, a reunion with her authentic self, supported by unbreakable sisterly love. Catriona's decision to expose the truth, painful as it was, became the catalyst for Isla's complete transformation and genuine happiness. Thanks for watching till the end. We know you loved this story, and there are many more thrilling ones waiting for you. Just click on the video on your screen to dive into the next chapter.